Brothers kind of fun brings people together.
Delayed.
Monopoly's been bringing people together for almost 50 years. That's how long we've been wheeling and dealing together, building hotels together, and going to jail together.
Corner the market and utilities. You can't lose.
Share a smile and your day seems a whole lot better.
Parker Brothers kind of fun brings people together.
Milton Bradley has made a game just for you, and it's called Candyland.
That's life.
The game of life, the game of life. You will learn about life when you play the game of life.
Mousetrap, the wildest, funniest game you've ever seen.
Mousetrap!
A detective has to be observant, cautious, and cool. When you play Clue, you have to figure out who did it. There are suspects, weapons, and scenes for a crime.
The fun is trying to guess when you play Guess Who.
Is your person bald? Yes.
A very good question.
Does your person have a beard? Uh-huh.
An excellent clue.
So a lot of people, when they hear board games, they tend to think about, Monopoly, they tend to think about Clue and, the traditional Hasbro style games.
I didn't really play board games as a kid, only just basic ones that everybody else probably played, like Candyland and Chutes and Ladders and Clue and Guess Who and board games that they would have at the elementary school that I went to.
Yeah, growing up, there weren't a lot of things that we were into. I remember my dad played Risk a lot, and he liked a lot of war games, but that was never really my speed.
When I was a kid, playing games was more of the traditional games like your Monopolies, your Scrabbles, Sorry, Candyland. And I remember liking games a lot even back then.
I honestly didn't really play that many games. I think we did the occasional Monopoly. I got too scared playing Operation. That buzzer freaked me out.
So I started playing games with my dad when I was a kid. He was a big chess player. He had traveled around Europe for a long time, and that was sort of the beginning of the end for me as far as loving board games.
I grew up in a small Mormon town in a Mormon family, and your 8th birthday is when you get baptized in the Mormon church, and Settlers of Zarahemla is actually a Mormon rendition of Settlers of Catan, which is really the first game that morphed old board games into new board games.
With Monopoly and Sorry and all that, they're fun, but they're kind of just one-trick games.
All these different classic games that most people will know sort of built this competitive edge and this excitement for board games.
Things have changed substantially from the typical games you'd play at home, which would get boring and monotonous.
I often get the shrug oh, you mean Monopoly? You mean Sorry? Guess one of those. And I have to inform them that there's a whole other world out there that has more than just your basic options. There's games that do those mechanics but better, and once I tell them that, they at least get intrigued, and I'll always be willing to invite them either to my house or to a board game store like Game Night or a gaming event.
So here at Game Night Games, every night is a kind of a different night. On Monday nights, we have Battletech, which is wargaming, giant robots versus giant robots, as well as Dice Masters, which is a combination of a dice and card game. Wednesday nights, we have open gaming as well as, D&D and Mistborn. So it's a big night for RPGers. There's just a lot of variety about what you can play in the store, and every night there's always something happening. have hundreds of games. We have games all the way from Europe. We have games that have been made overseas in Japan. We also have quite a few games that have been made here locally in Utah.
The board game community has made it to where a lot of people review games online and they'll tell you how the game is played or break down the rules so it's easier to understand.
Today we're going to be taking a look at Deception, Murder in Hong Kong.
HeroQuest is the best game ever made, and anyone who says otherwise is wrong.
Hello and welcome to Shut Up and Sit Down Teaches Pandemic Legacy.
We went and we found a game called Pandemic.
First off, can I congratulate you on an absolutely awesome purchase. We said this was the best game in the world in 2015 and you're going to have a lot of fun with it.
And decided to play it, and then I think a few months after that we owned close to 50 board games after that. So
games that have come out more recently that have gained traction are like legacy games.
This is a legacy game though, which means you're going to be changing it, you're going to be putting stickers on it, you're going to be doing all sorts of stuff and introducing new rules.
It's like an advent calendar where like you play with the same group of people, and like each time that you play you get to open a box, and it's like this, like you get to open a present.
There's loads of little presents in the box.
We've got an Istanbul, which is a really fun game.
2 to 5 players, each control matching merchants, all dragging cards behind them with matching holes in them.
Kind of a worker placement game where you are trying to get rubies before the rest of the players.
And you are racing to collect 5 rubies first. Why? Don't ask questions.
One of the first games that I really, really loved that we got into was Ticket to Ride.
This is Ticket to Ride, named after the Beatles song. Although John Lennon did say in retrospect that that song was about a card that a sex worker would have that showed they had a clean bill of health, which meant you were free to ride
Keep it professional.
Different, yes. It's a game.
Which is a super simple game. It was one of our gateways.
There's something called gateway games, which is a type of board game that's really easy to learn, but also, I guess, very different than what people would expect.
Deception is a great one that we've been playing recently. You designate a murderer, everyone has to close their eyes, nobody knows who the murderer is, and then somebody has to try and give you clues to try and guess who the murderer is.
I was able to play with my college buddies and learn how to communicate and sort of deceive other players, and that was sort of the fun in it all, was that I could have this experience where I could lie and get away with it and start winning and getting victory points or something like that.
There's also this other game called Time Stories.
Is this a Quantum Leap reference? Because I haven't seen Quantum Leap.
You play a different story and you're traveling in time.
It's like a breakneck water slide at times with twists and drops and more twists until you soaked the seat of your pants, American or British pants.
There's such a variety of games that it's almost unfathomable.
Fortunately, I've always had a game on me. I usually carry a game in my car at all times, so I love having the opportunity to be like, have you got 10 minutes? Let me show you this real quick.
Let's see, Raptor. Such a fun game. You're these scientists trying to keep this raptor locked up, kind of Jurassic Park-ish themes. One person can play as the scientist trying to keep the raptor and her babies locked up, and the other person can play as the raptor trying to get her and her babies out, which I think is a really cool theme because you're either a jerk or you're a raptor. I like it. This is another Ryan Lockhart game, which is really cool because he's a local Utah guy. He publishes, makes the artwork and designs the game. So it's really awesome. And he generally makes pretty solid games. Verna, Uwe Rosenberg. He's one of my more favorite designers that I have a hard time learning rules for, but I do love this game. It sucks that it has such a big setup time. It'd take you at least 20 to 30 minutes to set up the game, but once you get going, you can start making sheets. Betrayal at House on the Hill, it's super popular. I see why it's popular, but I don't like it. I feel like it's unbalanced, but they're supposed to be making a second version of it where it's all fixed. Mice and Mystics, this is one of the cooler games that I do own that I don't even play enough. It's half a storybook, half a board game, half role-playing game, and just so pretty and sexy.
When you start the conversation with people like board games, like do you play board games? it kind of starts with like, have you played Settlers of Catan? Like, and if people have heard of that, and then it goes into, well, Settlers of Catan is like a grandfather who've given birth to all these kids.
Settlers of Catan is sort of like this progression in age. I moved from party games to something like Settlers of Catan, which was sort of a smaller group of people of 4, but extremely interactive, extremely immersive.
And then from there, those kids have had kids with other games, and it's just kind of like hybridized to the point where like it's so innovative at this point.
One of my favorite game designers is Antoine Bauza. He does a lot of Japanese-themed games. And one of my favorite artists is Nayati, who does a kind of mix of modern cartoon art and Japanese anime art. And the two of them together made a game called Takedo, which is just a super beautiful, evocative game. That's the theme of it is just going on a walk through Japan.
It's really, really exciting to see like how people are mixing like different ideas together and how they're working with so you've got like a designer who has like mechanical ideas of how a game should work, and then you've got like the artists who can think of an innovative way of playing that out tangibly.
There's even games that are that we categorize as gamers as Euro games and Ameri-trash games.
Euros are usually very much the mechanics or the strategy is the kind of driver of what the designer was trying to do when they made the game. Settlers of Catan is a perfect example of a Euro-style game.
Ameri-trash games are more games that are flashy and will catch your eye and will be like, look how fun this looks all set up.
An American-style game is more thematically driven. Most people think of something like Dungeons and Dragons, which maybe is where it sort of came out of, but now there's all sorts of different story-driven games or games where the storyline is kind of the most important part.
With some people, it's funner to have like something that's super silly and not serious and really ridiculous, and where everybody's like on like the tip of their toes, you know, like trying to figure out how to not get everybody to call their bluff.
Most games that come out these days are actually a combination of the two.
There's a game called Dead of Winter, and they did a whole campaign to take this style of game and the function of the game and how to retheme it. And they had millions of people vote on what they wanted to see. I think the options were a space theme and then a slasher flick theme. I believe space won. I would have taken the slasher flick.
I mean, within the last 10 years itself, we've us gamers have called the last 10 years of gaming the renaissance of gaming because it's blown up so much.
Time bomb! Time bomb! Time bomb!
Time bomb!
He's here! My mystery date!
Mystery date. Are you ready for your mystery date? Don't be late. It could be great. Open the door for your mystery date.
It's Mystery Date, the thrilling new Milton Bradley game of romance and mystery that's just for you. And you. And you. And you. Mystery Date. Will you be ready for swimming? Or a dance? When you open the door, will your mystery date be a dream? Or a dud?
Oh!
Fun and surprises. That's Mystery Date. Remember, Milton Bradley makes the best games in the world. So girls,
open the door for your mystery date.
We've actually had a lot of luck with our relationship in board games because we've allowed it to become a big part of our relationship.
I've gone on first dates and brought games with me just to feel the water, see how they feel about it.
It's a joint hobby that we can do together with friends. It's allowed us to, really be dynamic in our relationship.
My girlfriend, Barbenley, when I met her, we were really good friends and have been really good friends for a long time, but she showed very little interest in playing games at all for years.
While he was starting to get into board games, I was one of the many friends who wouldn't play.
I think she considered me kind of nerdy for playing games, not really sure.
I would kind of judge it and not want to interact with it.
But since we've started dating, I've gotten her to try a few games and then a few more.
It started off with like games that only lasted half an hour. So then we'd like be able to play 4 or 5 games in one night. And then it started getting a little bit longer.
And at this point, she's absolutely loves the hobby, and we play games, 5 or 6 times a week, all the time.
He never like really like shoved it down my throat or anything. It was more just like it's something that he enjoyed and he would invite me.
I moved to Salt Lake City 2 years ago and met Anson and Barbenley and Sam around the same time. They were roommates at the time and all living together and all. So Barbenley had actually caught wind that I liked board games.
And I've have a lot of friends that I've met through playing board games, including my good friend Sam Morales, who I even ended up living with.
Anson and Sam became such good friends from playing games, and now Sam's my friend.
She was like, you should come over and check out my boyfriend's library. And walking into his living room was like a kid in a candy store. There were board games on every shelf.
Like every time we all see each other, where he's like, let's give each other a hug.
I work at Poplar normally, and I was telling all my coworkers that I'm going to a board game convention, and most were just, they laughed it off type deal, like, you're a nerd, which, of course I am. But my manager at the time, he was all about it. He's like, man, I used to love playing games. I still do. Like, what about getting something going here Sundays?
I thought that I could get a budget from the bar and buy all the games that I want to, but I quickly realized, like, to get a good library that people, if they don't know anything about games and they've maybe had a few drinks, could sit down and play, to games that are more abstract and way more thinking. I couldn't do that with just the budget, so I put in probably 20 games probably.
I remember the first night we were doing it, a small green cube, one of like 70, hit the ground. And everyone at the table stopped playing the game, pushed their chairs away, all got their cell phone apps, like the flashlight app out, and they were on the hunt for this piece. And like I said, I thought we were gonna lose like 4 or 5 pieces to every game every night. And I haven't had a game gone missing. I haven't had a game spilt on, and from what I can see, I haven't had any pieces come up missing. So
if you go to any board game store, you can really just drop in on games with anybody, and everyone will let you play. People are really nice. There's lots of different people that you'll meet.
A friend of ours that we went to the first convention with actually is just covered in tattoos.
I've usually had hard times in the past making friends and having friends come over and entertaining them properly.
He approached a table of 2 older ladies, probably in their 50s, playing a game, and you could tell that right off the bat they were like, I'm not really sure how to feel about this.
That's one thing that really drew me to it, is being able to have people come over and be like, check out this new game I just got.
He asked if he could play. He sat down and they played the entire game. By the end, he had them laughing. They were all having a great time.
I don't know. I've met other people that I think I normally wouldn't have talked to. And it's a huge, huge icebreaker.
I currently work at a high school as a teacher's assistant with autistic kids, and I brought my games to them, and it's been something that's been really great because it's been able to build them a little bit more confidence playing this little silly game and having them beat me at it, knowing that like, oh, I can do something that somebody else can do.
It's like, oh, you're doing this thing that I think is really fun. Let's talk about it. And now, like, when I see you next time, I don't feel so weird talking to you. And you're a part of my community, and I know that you like lighthearted things too, and it kind of like breaks this whole like social barrier that I think a lot of people have a hard time with.
With that culture, it's been a really welcoming community. Like, people with board games usually want more people to play games with them, because unlike video games, you can't play those on your own.
You would think that kind of there would be culture shock or something where people couldn't get together and play, but really anyone can jump in on any game and have a good time.
My parents who English isn't their first language, I've been able to build a better relationship with them because I've been able to bring games where there's no language barrier.
You can sit down with a game and just sit it on the table, and within, I'd say, 5 to 10 minutes, someone's gonna come by and be like, are you guys looking to play this? Like, I'll play with you, or I can show you how to play this real quick.
Okay, so the game is Dr. Eureka. We are trying to collect 4 of these cards to win. Each round we're gonna flip up one of these cards, and this tells you how you want your molecules to be arranged in your beakers.
One of the great things about going to a convention like SaltCon is that they have these map tables and these trading tables where you can go in and set your whatever board game maybe that didn't necessarily suit your needs or what you consider fun.
I've never had anything stolen. I've never, these are really good people.
We have such an honest community that you can leave your $100 game on a table unattended.
So I went to the convention by myself, and I just sat down at tables. Everyone was very inviting. Anyone would play with me.
2 of our best friends that we've met, they now live in Minnesota, but we met them at a board game convention. We've kind of developed like a lifelong friendship solely because we sat down to play a game with someone.
We get a hotel room. We stay, we're in it for the long haul. We'll stay there 4 or 5 days in a row. We get people up in our hotel, people that we're just meeting, that were just met that day, and we're partying till 6 in the morning with them.
There's a game that came out just this year at Essen, which is the world's largest board game convention in Germany, called Adrenaline. And Adrenaline is a first-person shooter board game where I think that is a great trick to get people who have played video games and like competition between friends, but they are now sitting at a table together.
And you basically are just trying to have the loveliest time.
I just see games getting better, the designs are getting better, the mechanics are getting better, the components are getting better, the boxing is getting better, even to presentation of a game is getting better. There have been games that have opened up and it has, within the box, it opens up within itself, and I'm just like, wow, that was a show in itself. That was well worth the X amount of dollars.
It's definitely going to get bigger within the next couple of years, and I think you're going to see a lot more people that are instead of saying like, oh, do you have Monopoly, you're going to see a lot more people saying, oh, do you have Ticket to Ride?
I'm excited to see what they're doing, because right now they're just playing with not using cardboard. So what are they going to do next year? What are they going to do in 5 years? We can't tell, and that's exciting.
We're going to see things just trying everything. They're going to be doing everything they can to change what there is. Legacy games are a great example of that, where you are literally tearing up cards within a game.
They've even started making these same games with like movie and TV show themes, especially ones that have big fanfare, like Firefly and Harry Potter, which I was really excited about, and things like that that have huge fanfare. You already have that fan base.
I really do think there's a game for everybody.
That's POW, Milton Bradley's great cannon game for boys. And what about you girls? Well, Milton Bradley made a game for you called WOW. WOW, the pillow fight game for girls.